Long ago, in the land of Israel, a great battle was about to take place. The army of Israel stood on one hill. Across the valley stood their enemies, the powerful Philistines. For many days, neither army moved. But every morning, a giant stepped forward from the Philistine camp. His name was Goliath. Goliath was enormous, taller than any man in either army. His armor was heavy bronze, shining in the sun. His spear was thick like a weaver's beam, and his voice thundered across the valley. "Choose a man to fight me," Goliath shouted. "If he defeats me, we will serve you. But if I defeat him, you will serve us." The challenge echoed through the hills. But no one stepped forward. Even Saul, the king of Israel, felt afraid. Goliath was simply too big, too strong, too terrifying. For 40 days, the giant came out and shouted the same challenge. And for 40 days, the soldiers of Israel trembled. Not far from the battlefield lived a young shepherd named David. David was the youngest son of a man named Jesse. While his older brothers served in King Saul's army, David stayed home caring for the sheep. One day, Jesse gave David a task. "Take this food to your brothers," he said. "See how they are doing." So David packed bread and grain and traveled to the battlefield. When he arrived, the armies were standing in their usual positions. Suddenly, the giant Goliath stepped forward again. His booming voice echoed across the valley. "Send me a man to fight." David heard the challenge and looked around in surprise. "Why is no one fighting him?" David asked the soldiers. The men shook their heads. "That giant is too strong," they said. "No one can defeat him." But David felt something different. "He is mocking the army of the living God," David said. "Someone must stand up to him." Word of David's bold words quickly reached Saul. Soon the young shepherd was brought before the king. "You are only a boy," Saul said. "How can you fight this giant?" But David answered with confidence. "I have taken care of my father's sheep," he said. "When a lion or a bear attacked the flock, I fought them and rescued the sheep." David looked at the king and said, "The same God who protected me from the lion and the bear will protect me from this giant." Saul thought for a moment. Then he nodded. "Go," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." Saul offered David his armor, a heavy helmet and a bronze coat. But when David tried to walk, he could hardly move. "I cannot fight like this," David said. So he took the armor off. Instead, David picked up his shepherd's staff and walked to a nearby stream. There he chose 5 smooth stones and placed them in his small shepherd's bag. In his hand, he held only a sling. That was all. When Goliath saw David approaching, he laughed loudly. "Am I a dog," the giant shouted, "that you come to me with sticks?" The giant looked down at the young shepherd and mocked him. But David did not run. Instead, he called back to the giant. "You come to me with sword and spear," David said boldly, "but I come to you in the name of the Lord." The giant roared and began to move forward. David ran toward him. Quickly, David reached into his bag and pulled out a stone. He placed it in his sling. Then he swung the sling in the air, faster and faster. With one powerful motion, David released the stone. The stone flew through the air and struck Goliath directly on the forehead. The giant staggered. Then he fell face down to the ground with a mighty crash. The battlefield fell silent. The giant had been defeated. When the Philistines saw their champion fall, fear spread through their army. They turned and ran. The soldiers of Israel cheered and chased their enemies away. That day, a young shepherd defeated a giant, not because he was the strongest, but because he trusted God. From that moment, the name David became known throughout Israel. And although no one knew it yet, the shepherd boy who defeated a giant would one day become the greatest king Israel would ever know. But that is another story.